Welcome to New Game Plus. This is a retro gaming podcast where three guys spend 7 days playing one old game and then we talk about it. My name's Dustin.
My name's Kenny.
Nolan here.
And you are listening to episode 269, and this is a very special director episode. Every once in a while, we get one of our lovely listeners who is a patron at our top tier director level to come and join us on the show and talk about a game of their choice. Today, we're going to be talking with Unbedavable, but before we do that, I know, Nolan, you want me to talk about some of the BlizzCon stuff. Can we... But here's my thing. I honestly...
Talk about my life?
Yeah, I think we deserve a few minutes to whine about this past week.
Okay.
It's a big deal. Both of you live in Texas. We've all had unfortunate circumstances within the past few days. But Kenny and Nolan, both of you live in Texas, and the unexpected occurred. Texas snowed. Texas froze. How have y'all been?
Bad. Real bad.
Real bad.
I was without power for 3.5 days.
Bad.
I was without water for like half a day, and then it came back on, but like just to a drip. So like fill up a pot for a long time and then boil it, and now I can drink it or wash my face or do anything. Didn't shower for any of that time. Are still low on food, and I don't know what I'm gonna do about that. So yeah, I'm bad.
So you still might not make it, honestly.
I still might die. So thank you all for, listening to this podcast. I don't know.
it's a support.
Yeah, thank you.
For the last moment of Nolan.
Kenny, true or false? You've been at the lake during this whole time?
Ted
False.
Cruz? He went to the lake to get away from it all.
I should have. No, actually, that would have been a terrible idea because the lake became Nolan's life. No power, no heat, no anything. But I actually had it relatively easy this week relative to a lot of folks. Yeah, it's been annoying because snow and everybody's doing terribly. But my house is relatively close to a hospital, and so we were on a part of the grid that didn't get shut off of power. Good. So I had power and heat, all of that.
That's good.
My ISP, however, didn't. So it was a weird week of like no connection to the internet whatsoever.
So the power might as well have been out. Like no internet.
Right, the power may have been out. Everything I do for entertainment is based on the internet. Everything I do for socialization and connecting with the world and getting my news and everything is the internet. And so it was still a weird week, like no work, feeling sort of disconnected. Couldn't drive anywhere because roads are frozen. But I had the option to drink water and shower. So,
but did you?
I still didn't
do
all
those
week.
things?
No, neither of those things.
My complaint, admittedly, feels lesser now, guys.
What is it?
What's your complaint?
Well, I've been playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Okay,
right?
Yeah.
All right.
What are off the top of your head? I know neither of you have much Assassin's Creed experience, but what are some characteristics of the Assassin's Creed franchise? Like what makes parkour? Okay, yeah.
Sneak up and stab.
Sneak up, assassinate.
Yeah.
Travel.
One of you.
Story and like real super like historically based.
There we go.
Depth and accuracy.
There we go. Guess where I am right now in our game?
Oh, I was like, you're in your
Cheese,
home.
No, Valhalla.
Wow.
Sorry, not in Valhalla. That's the name of the game. I got confused. Worse. Asgard. We're in Asgard right now, doing a mission with Thor and Loki. So.
Wow.
Bro.
They went kind of off the deep end.
Wait. Stop.
So historical accuracy, no, unless they know something that I don't.
Right,
know.
Maybe they've been somewhere you haven't,
so
and it's actually a really accurate, like city by city layout of exactly how Asgard looks.
So you're an Avenger in the new Assassin's Creed game.
We are. You know what happens when I call my mount in Asgard instead of a horse showing up? My massive reindeer.
No,
are you kidding? What were they thinking?
Does it fly?
Not yet, but I'm sure that it will. It'll probably get a red nose.
That's worse
No,
than 3 days
I
without
don't.
power.
I don't want it to go Christmassy. I want it to sprout wings like Pegasus style and go weird reindeer Pegasus.
Well,
that's what I want for you.
I'm disappointed. The game is lackluster. It's boring. It's putting me to sleep. Z's, So I'm glad that y'all are doing well, though.
You were so uncommitted to that one.
I'm glad that y'all are doing well. I've been worried about you all week. So
I see what you did there.
Kenny really should do these.
Yeah, it's much more his.
I'm glad it's not though.
All right, let's go. I don't know. Join us as we talk about our retro game of the week, Z. Unbedavable, aka Dave, is here joining us for this very special director episode. Dave, welcome to the show.
Hello, hello.
Thank you, sir.
We're so glad that you're finally here. Give us just a little bit of background before we talk about the game of the week. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you came to New Game Plus, when you came to New Game Plus, why you came to New Game Plus.
Why you stayed?
That's actually, I'm glad you asked. This gives me an opportunity to shout out a very good friend of mine who we go way, way, way back. We actually met in preschool. He's one of your, he's on the Discord as well. His name's, his handle is Zcal.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
He's done some commentary on a couple of episodes in the past. We've been friends forever, and he texted me just completely out of the blue because he moved out of state from where I live years ago, and he texted me completely out of the blue in late 19 and was like, "Hey, there's this podcast I'm listening to. It's about retro gaming. What do you think?" And I was like, "All right," and I checked it out, and I got about 20 episodes in, and I was like, okay, I'm hooked on this. This is great.
Yes.
My first episode was Fallout, which was a good place to start. I had to go back later and heard the first 9 because I've missed Jurassic Park, which I had to go back and hear Jurassic Park.
No, you didn't.
Those early meme episodes are fun.
No, look, I'm not especially a retro gamer, but I have a huge amount of nostalgia for the games that I loved growing up, and I just the curiosity of exploring all these random games like Nancy Drew and Scooby-Doo Mystery and the Magical Mystery Mall and so on and so forth. It's awesome. I love it. Nobody else is talking about these games. It's great.
Yeah, you just described me. I'm not a retro gamer either, but I'm on a podcast about it because I'm curious.
Don't say that on
No,
air.
That's me. Hey, is Zcal referencing this game?
No, well,
Okay.
I don't think so because
Okay.
I believe that was his username back in AOL Instant Messenger days.
Okay.
So you did just say Zcal. It's a great transition into the conversation on the retro game of the week. Before Nolan kind of gives a brief overview, is this game called Z or is it called Zed, or does that just depend where in the world that you live?
Yes.
I would say it depends. Well, yes is the answer, but I would say it depends on where you live. I mean, it's Zed in Britain, it's Z here.
Okay.
It's
So-
Zed in New Zealand.
Yeah, in a lot of other countries, it's
Yeah.
Zed.
It's
gonna hear
hard to
Z.
pronounce a single letter with 3 letters to me.
Well, yeah, I've always thought so too, but I think I'm gonna call it Zed because
Kenny.
Have
Kenny,
you ever heard of W?
W.
You don't have a problem with that
Ooh,
letter.
boy.
No, I do, because that's a
No.
full word and then a letter.
Hypocrite.
I think I'm gonna
I
call
do
it
have a problem with W.
Okay, well then, fine. You're not a hypocrite. You're just confused.
W and Z are messed up letters. I'll just say that.
I think I'm gonna say Zed because I think it came out in Europe first, just like a few
Yeah.
days before.
Yeah, it
in the
did.
same month. Okay, cool. So
Look at
let's call
you.
it Zed.
Overview.
Zed is impossible to search on the internet, and it is an old school RTS for PC. Originally an MS-DOS game released by Virgin Interactive in 1996 in Europe first, and then in the same month it came out in the States. Developed by a company called the Bitmap Brothers. Never heard of them. Maybe it is just two brothers. Who knows? We'll never know.
With the last name Bitmap.
No one actually
No
knows.
one knows. I'm not going to click on the Wikipedia link.
No,
no
they
one
don't
will,
know.
No one will ever know. Yeah. So 1996 PC game, real-time strategy. Kenny, this is your stupid preference for a video game.
Wow.
Not mine. I don't think it's Dustin's either. And this one is slightly different than maybe the classic real-time strategy games that you usually think of when you think RTS. I think StarCraft. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. But then like a bunch of other weird like war-themed games and medieval ones that have manuals this big.
I think of Age of Empires.
Okay.
Yeah, those are all good ones. Command and
Classic.
Conquer. There's lots from this
Classic.
era. Warcraft.
Right.
Red? Isn't there something red?
Red 13.
Red Dawn.
Red
There's
Dawn.
Command and Conquer Red Dawn.
Command and Conquer, Red Dawn, Red 13, the color red. Yeah.
Color red.
Yeah, the color red. Yeah.
Apples exist.
Apples.
We totally are following you, Dustin.
Okay. In this game, it's a like top-down view, so it looks familiar to real-time strategy players or those familiar with the genre. You're playing as robots fighting other robots, so there's some sort of war going on. And the goal is to destroy the other team's base or army. There are other win conditions, and we can talk about that in gameplay, but that's the overall like big goal, is to just defeat the other army, which is traditional RTS. There are 20 levels, so you're traveling from planet to planet, so it's space themed. I think the theme is a big deal for RTS games. Like I said, it's usually like it's either fantasy or it's space, and in this case it's space and you're robots, so very futuristic sci-fi.
And Dave, you could have picked any retro video game for us to play other than the 268 games that we've already played on the show. Why did you pick Zed?
Well, first let me say this was a really difficult choice to make. Holy cow. I agonized over this. I feel like Kenny did when he had to pick
Anything.
Anything, yeah.
Literally anything.
I went through probably 30 games, ranging from games that would just be to make you guys miserable, to games that I genuinely loved. Dustin, Final Fantasy IX was a very close contender. My favorite Final Fantasy game, and it's not close.
Yeah, it's so good. That game is ridiculous.
And it's on PlayStation 1. I know we're not
Yes,
talking
that's
about
right.
it,
Yeah,
but that's ridiculous.
so good.
It's excellent. But this game, so I feel like I had kind of as far as PC gaming goes, I feel like I was really lucky as a kid. My dad has run a business, a family business forever, and they've really relied on computers. And so he was always having to make company-wide level upgrading decisions, and he would get throw-ins. So he would get just some PC or a laptop or
So
something, and he'd
cool.
be able to bring it home. So we had new computers probably 2 or 3 times a year.
Huge in the 90s. That's a good perk in the
Absolutely.
90s.
Very uncommon. I mean, I had no idea how good I had it.
And you kind of even needed it more back then. Like upgrade cycles on hardware was this was when stuff was crazy, and every year or two performance was doubling, and like it's really nice to be able to kind of stay current. Super cool.
The sort of 286 to 486 to Pentium era, everything moved really, really fast. So we were getting new stuff all the time. And this is interesting. This is the only video game my dad ever bought me. My mom was the one who would buy games. They didn't let me buy games because they knew I would buy stuff that I wasn't allowed to have.
Diablo.
So my mom would buy me all the games. But this was the one game my dad bought because the guy, Commander Zod, who is the box art, looks like a character from Apocalypse Now. He's got the big wide-brimmed hat, and so Dad bought that. And I don't know why he thought that was appropriate for me, but he did.
That
As a
movie's
10-year-old. But he bought it, and I was terrible at it. I had played Warcraft 2 and loved it, and Beyond the Dark Portal, and I had played some Diablo, and I'd a couple other random RTSs. So I really love that genre, but I was awful at this game. And so this was one that I came back to for years. I mean, literally probably from 10 to 20. Every time I got a PC upgrade, I would play this game as long as my computer could still run it. Because I would slowly get better and I would get one level further every time. And, you know, for a while there, games, my computer would hardly run it. And then later it would run it better. So I just have so many years of experience with this game. That and also just meta point about the podcast. RTSs are badly underrepresented in the catalog of games on this show, and this game I feel like is a good entry point for people into like an RTS games because it's not overly complicated. It's not like Gorgon Birthright,
Gorgon's
Birthright, where that game was so unbelievably complicated. This is really simple. Production is automatic. You're just choosing what gets built, and you know you don't have to control individual robots. They're in groups of 3, and so that's why I picked it.
When it comes to RTS, it might be underrepresented here on this podcast. That's for you to take up with the randomizing gods because we have little to no say over that. However, for pools in the future, listeners submit RTSs because here's the thing. Like we've already mentioned, Kenny, you are an RTS queen. That's kind of what you enjoy. I have always liked them and liked the idea of them and have always been bad at them because I cannot multitask that much. There's so much going on. Even in this game that tries to handhold it for a little bit, there's still a lot going on and it's stressful. I like to take my games more slowly with a full manual with like 100 pages, not like RTSs, but like an RPG that's a walkthrough, slow, pause, exactly strategy.
I'm surprised you can even handle like active time battle in Final Fantasy series without just having a meltdown. Right. Because I know.
Do y'all want a
who
very
you
quick
are.
Plot?
Yeah.
Or no? Okay.
Yeah. Because you said it's robots in space, but there are a lot of cinematic cutscenes that we may or may not were able to watch this week. That is central to kind of the humor and story kind of that's happening here.
Yes. So, 2 robots are traveling through space in a supply ship. Y'all want to guess their names? Like
is it Brad and Alan?
Z106 or Xenon or something.
Spoiled it. It's Brad and Alan.
It's Brad and Alan.
Love it.
Which is great because you get an A name and a B name, and then Commander Zod as the
the Zed.
Yeah.
So they're bros in space, drunk on oil,
rocket fuel,
rocket fuel.
Yeah. Something. Yeah.
And so they're late with their shipment. Commander Zod, the robot on the cover that Dave was just talking about, is like the game's mascot, I guess we could say. This very like military, Full Metal Jacket kind of character. Calls them, tells them to hurry up, and then that's how the game starts. So just wanted to say that the robots' names are Brad and Alan.
And the game and the plot very much follows that. Like the transitions between levels are the same. They get in the ship and they travel from one spot to another. And then every 4 levels, you finish the planet and you move on to the next, and so on and so forth until the end of the game.
Yeah, there's usually some threat, but like this game, it's like very, very simple and kind of silly throughout, even until the ending. Like it's
but like simple. Real mid-90s silly. When you called them bros, you weren't kidding. These are when we say robots, a lot of times people picture like. These are like real anthropomorphic robots. Yes. Like they're humans and they got human names and they, knock back rocket fuel that clearly is getting them wasted. And all of the humor is sort of that like kind of edgy mid-90s, we're clearly catering to a bunch of guys with how we want to go about like marketing this game sorts of humor. And it's fun.
It felt Bill and Ted?
Excellent Adventures.
What?
Yeah.
Ben and Ted?
No,
Bill
it's
and
Bill.
Ted's Excellent Adventures. Yeah, it kind of feels that kind of vibe, that kind of humor for sure.
Yeah.
Gameplay.
So Nolan, you said that it was 20 missions. It
Yes.
is 20 different missions across 5 different planets, and you're doing the same thing. You're building up your military.
Yep.
You're capturing territories and you're defeating enemies. That's what you're doing every single map, but every single map changes. You're getting new units, and the enemy's getting new units along the way, and then there's different terrain differences and variances that come into play as well. But there are a few different winning conditions. I don't know if you caught that when you were playing, but at the beginning I didn't go for defeating all enemy units, which is one of the ways to do it. You can also destroy the enemy base or do what I did early on and in my first play. I entered the enemy base.
Yeah.
If you can get one unit inside that enemy base, then it's game over.
You've read Ender's Game way too many times.
Yes.
And
no.
the enemy's base is down. All
Or
you got to
gate.
do is go through that garage in this case.
Game over.
And game over. And I 100% found myself being like you. Like the fighting and all of that is great, but I tended to like tactically just try and go for the fast way and just like get something in there because I couldn't resist.
And in response to that, the enemy always has more defenses on their base than you do. And I don't know if you caught that, but in every single level,
Interesting.
you've got like one gun, and the enemy will have like 3 or 4
Got you.
mounted on the turrets
Yeah.
of their fort.
And like as you progress, it gets like more and more unfair for you. Like that's how
Yeah.
they handle
Yeah.
difficulty, which was, I guess, fair enough. That you got to do something, but I don't know. Even on the first stage, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm like you, Dustin. I suck at these games, like really, really bad. So, okay. And the other thing about this one that like made me worse at it. Or sorry, not worse, a little better. Resource management is like a big deal in these games, but in this game, you don't have any,
Nope.
like at all, which is welcome for me because I hate that. Like you have your units and there are objectives on the field, and it's like go get them, and then you get benefits. To me, that's more like Fire Emblem. Some stuff like I'm getting some Fire Emblem vibes from that, and I like that better. However, I still suck at this game, and I can't win ever.
It definitely is more accessible than a game where you have to like harvest minerals or keep track of whatever. But there is still a little bit there to manage because sort of controlling those bases is what lets you get additional production. So you got to figure out where you're going to take and if you're going to be able to hold it. You got to make a choice about which thing those bases you do take is going to produce. And so there's a little bit of that sort of like strategy and like purchasing that some of the games have. So it's not like so simple that you lose all of those strategic elements, but it's definitely a lot simpler than a game where you have to learn sort of a whole like economy and strategy on top of these sort of tactical decisions that you're making. It's a lot more just like jump in and, and mess around with the sort of tactics of it. Pretty straightforward, which is important because these older games, and maybe this is the sort of some of the hurdles of like playing, today, but they're a lot harder from like a UI UX perspective to like control the stuff and feel like you really have say. And so the fact that this game leaned into a little bit more simplicity really helped me get over that and feel like despite that, I could figure out what was going on and make decisions that were meaningful, but without having to like micromanage a bunch of stuff. It was welcome for me.
Well, we're not even fully detailing the simplicity of it compared to other RTSs because y'all mentioned resource management, but and maybe this ties in there and we've hinted at it, but you're not building buildings like you do in these games. All you're doing is controlling your units. There are on every map, there's predetermined building locations and types. You can change maybe what they are manufacturing based on the building, but that's only 2, maybe 3 different unit options based on a building. There might be, I'm sure there's more as the game progresses, but there is very little to manage related to StarCraft or other games like that. But Nolan, it's still a lot. I mean,
Dave, why am I still struggling in this game?
Well, this might be more of like an age section discussion, but for me, because I still struggle with this game. I mean, I was like having major problems by level 6. And a huge part of that is this game has
like you got to 6.
I got to like 2, bro.
Well, there's 20 levels, so I mean, I wasn't even halfway through the game, but
no one wasn't either.
The AI in this game, for both you and the enemy, has major problems. Yes. And there's an element of sort of luck that goes into battles. Like one of the interesting features of this game is all of your vehicles. So you have foot soldiers and you have vehicles, and the vehicles are jeeps, tanks, or you have APCs later. You have cranes and bridge building stuff. But all of them, when they engage in combat with the enemy, the driver of the vehicle will pop their head out and they will shoot. So you'll see them, they'll get their gun out and they will shoot at the enemy that their tank is shooting at, which leaves them vulnerable. And so it actually gives foot soldiers an opportunity to take down a vehicle because they can shoot at the guy driving it. And that's where you sort of have this element of randomness that comes into play. So even if you're good at the game, you can really get messed up by the third planet. You've got your heavy tank that gets knocked out by the random jeep that the enemy built. You know, it doesn't happen often, but it can happen.
Third planet?
Yeah, there's 5 planets.
Right. You're talking about like stage 15 or something at this point. That's not how math works.
I could see the balance thought behind doing that, because you're not building buildings and like getting better units necessarily. And it's like drivers could, like, if you just had a bunch of vehicles, it's like, okay, yeah, of course they're going to win. So you have to have a vulnerability. But that randomness, the random aspect to it just kind of ruins it. And it's like, okay, like...
I'm not opposed, especially since they sort of justify like visually what's going on. And I like the idea that you can shoot the driver and then take over the vehicle. That's nice, cool, because it can
GTA.
It can lead to some interesting swings that would not be quite the same as if every, you know, thing you were driving was just destroyed or not. And so I kind of liked that mechanic personally, but I also don't mind randomness. Like, people whine that like Risk is, you know, based on luck because you're rolling those dice and outcomes of battles is kind of out of your control, but people love that game. This feels like that to me.
I think one of the things that I like about that is that it means that your foot soldiers are never totally obsolete. You get a lot of them. I mean, you were saying, Dustin, that early in the game you've only got 2 or 3 options, but later, I mean, you've got 7 different infantry types and like 8 different vehicles to choose from at every single factory. So it takes a while to scroll through. But one of my favorite units in the game is actually the snipers. You get snipers on the 2nd planet. And it's funny because they're introduced with no fanfare. A lot of the levels where you get a new unit type are titled to indicate what you're getting. So like, there's a level called like Pyromaniacs or something on the 2nd world where you get pyros, which are foot soldiers with flamethrowers. But on that same level, you also get the snipers, and the snipers operate a lot like just the grunts, the basic foot soldiers. They have a rifle, but they're a lot faster and they can shoot from farther. And I don't know if this is true. I've never been able to confirm this, but I believe they prioritize shooting drivers. So they will automatically target drivers of any vehicle they come up against, and they usually get the first shot. So you can build those to knock out a vehicle.
And because of this somewhat random nature of things, that it's not just like one unit type is going to instantly beat another unit type, range comes into play in a much greater way than some of these other RTS games, because if you can, with a sniper or someone else, stay out of attack range of another of your enemy, then even if you're weaker, you're probably going to be able to take out that enemy unit. I found that on some of the bases, taking out their turrets. If I could bring in like a light unit or even use other buildings as my as like a defense, like if I hide kind of on a corner, then I could shoot them. But they couldn't hit me, and so I think some of that those range factors come into play here with the way that this game is set up.
Yeah, Dustin, you say that, and it's 100% true. I think it is worth pointing out, though, that the main sort of strategic element here is still supposed to be a little rock, paper, scissors-y, kind of like a lot of these games.
Why?
You have certain units that will work really well against other units, and so you're kind of watching production of what's being thrown at you and trying to counter that, but you're also having to do it real time, and they're doing the same thing. I mean, as much as the AI can. You're right, it's not super robust, even though the sort of uniqueness of the AI is something this game like pushed as kind of a selling point of the game. But yeah, it still sort of follows that, like, you know, you buy this gun to beat that tank sort of mode of operation.
Yeah, but it's not foolproof like it is in.
Oh no, not at all. It's not a.
You can't Zerg rush.
You can't Zerg.
I can
rush.
always Zerg rush.
We've talked about the AI stuff. The AI frustration that I had the most had to do with pathing. Like if I sent my crew, if I wanted them to go to a certain location, they might get there eventually, but they're not going to take the easiest path there.
They're taking a pit stop for rocket fuel.
Oh, for sure.
Before they get to where you tell them to go, because that was my biggest frustration too. I was like, why is this so slow and not listening to what I want it to do?
If they're all drunk robots, it makes sense.
It's funny because this game is simultaneously really slow and really quick. Like it's not. It doesn't take long to determine that your attempt at a level is over. You know, you can lose one or two combat engagements at the beginning, and it's done, and you need to restart because you're never going to catch back up.
I know that very well.
But at the same time, the movement is so slow. It's very slow.
And also and we've said it a couple times at this point, but the amount of units that you have at once is just far less than other RTS games. Like when you in like StarCraft get a new squad or something, it's like I mean the click and drag thing is still in this game, so that's familiar, but like I'm having to click and drag like little boxes instead of huge ones to grab a whole like army, just because there's not that much on the screen.
Well, for the first, probably, I don't know, and people play differently, but for the first few stages, I was beating the stage when I did beat it with like 8 units, 12 units, you know, no more than 20 units for the first little bit. And so that, and some of them are like, it's even counting the guys that are manning the turrets back at the base. Yeah. So you don't have tons of people out there.
Yeah, I mean, and you're actually capped. You're capped at 50.
At 50, yeah, on single
you can't have any more than 50 units at any given time.
Wow.
But if you have that many, you've won. I mean, it's
right,
over.
You only get that late stage, late in the game, and at the end of each stage, when you do win, Nolan, you get a rank. You get a rank based on how well you did, how many units you used, the time completion, and it's like corporal, lieutenant, major, warlord, those kinds of things. But you might not see that much if you're just constantly losing.
Yeah. I saw it once.
Yeah. Dave, did you ever play multiplayer? Because it does have multiplayer, correct? Right. That seems like a pretty big selling point.
I played multiplayer exactly once. And it was just because this was a game that nobody else had when I had it. I mean, the only other friend I had that had it was Zcal, who I mentioned earlier. Yeah. But he had it on a Mac, so we couldn't play together. Yeah. He posted in Discord earlier this week. He still has his big box version of the Mac release. So yeah, but so we never could play together. But I played once with a friend who lived in my neighborhood. But that was it. But I mean, from what I understand, the multiplayer had a lot of appeal to it. In fact, there's been 3 or 4 different efforts outside of the Steam and GOG versions of the games that exist now to modernize the game. Like 3 different projects under 3 different names, and all 3 of them basically focused on the multiplayer. That like the story missions are there, but basically you can use the story maps as multiplayer maps. So they are all focused on multiplayer. It was a really big deal, especially in Great Britain. They apparently it was huge there. It never took off as much here, I don't think.
I love PC communities. Like there are so many PC games that we play on the podcast that end up having like these like fan-made mods that make the game better or try to revive it. I love that. But they usually end up failing. And it sounds like that's the case here too.
You don't get that as much these days. Just sort of games are less accessible and more a walled garden sort of, tech-wise. But I love that sort of era of like, we have a niche community that loves this thing. And so we're going to keep giving it legs and support even past what it was meant for. And it's just sort of, it's neat to see that. And this game absolutely had that in spades. Big, maybe not big, but like passionate following of people that loved and played this game. And
it's worth pointing out that the Bitmap brothers, this was like their last major release, and they had a pretty strong following prior to this game. They had a couple of really big titles. Speedball, most of them these didn't make big releases here. No, we haven't. Y'all haven't played Speedball. It's all most of their games were about robots. And this was like a robot soccer type game. There was a Speedball and a Speedball 2.
We may have.
We played Speedball. It was episode 30. I don't know. It was in the 30s.
That's the one that we actually kind of liked a lot.
And we mentioned it just recently because it's that like futuristic
hockey
sport, soccer.
I'm gonna have to go back and listen to that. I've forgotten completely.
It was in the 30s. I knew that it sounded familiar.
So anyway, Speedball's one of their games. They also had a game called like Magic Pockets, which was a platformer that was huge. Actually, it's apparently one of these like hidden gems of retro gaming.
Huh.
And then this was their last game, and it was their first RTS. So I mean, most of their games were big departures from what they'd made previously. So they had a big following in Great Britain, and
interesting.
So there was a lot of excitement about this game when it came out.
And then I guess the family broke up after this.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, and they are not actually brothers.
Well,
just for FYI,
it's in the name. So
but it's funny though. You should go look up the company. They had this image. They had a self-made image of being the bad boys of PC gaming development.
Oh no!
Like they had these pictures where like they're standing like with their arms crossed against a brick wall, wearing leather jackets and sunglasses. Like that was their sort of persona.
Aged.
So there's always a reality with these mid-90s PC titles that I don't know if Dustin at least, or Nolan to a lesser extent, can ever handle well. And that is getting some of these old games to run can be slightly daunting, although we've all used computers enough that it shouldn't be like the end of the world.
No, listen, to be fair, Dave had to send us a comprehensive email this past week saying, hey, here are some options of how you could possibly get it to play, and none of them are complete experiences. Is that fair or not, Dave?
That is very fair.
That is accurate.
There were ways to play this game, but you didn't have the cutscenes. And then there were ways to play this game with the cutscenes, but it was a poor experience. And then there were ways to play it in more of a modern version, or more modern, but it didn't give kind of the original experience feel. And so we might have all done something slightly different this year.
Here was my experience with you in this game, Dustin. Oh, hey guys, it's going to be tough to play because it's old. And also, I can't Google it because I'm bad at Google.
Because it's a letter.
It's a letter.
Yeah,
you type in
put
Z
in
video
more than
game.
one word. It's not hard to use a little Google foo and add some context.
World War Z
have,
comes up.
And have Google tell you No, the first time I Googled something about this game, I got results that led me directly to valid options of how to play.
You should have told
it's
Google
not that hard
to pronounce it the British way, and then it would have
I
worked.
should have just typed in ZED, which is the letter Z apparently.
No, it
and
would've come up
you
with
the
still
motherland.
would have gotten a ton of
Um,
results without some context
So
there.
all three of those options are bad because they are like a really major trade-off. I think the cutscenes are vital to the full experience of this game,
Absolutely.
but I played the version without them and watched them later because they're on YouTube. So I think that's probably the optimal thing to do in 2021. But those cutscenes, you have to have them because I think what you're saying about the Bitmap Brothers, Dave, their humor is shining through, and the tone is like so important here because it's ridiculous. But then like, yeah, you can't play a version that is just like it runs poorly. So
Dave, why did you steer us away from the more modern one? Is it just because you want us to have an original experience, or does it change things drastically?
So the reason I kind of steered you away from the Steam and GOG version is, which, okay, don't hate me, but this is really ironic because I mostly played that this week. I got it working through DOSBox and I had the original game running, but something kept happening and the game would think that by default the scenes were turned on, but the files were missing. So then the game just wouldn't launch. I couldn't get it to launch at all after a couple of days.
Same.
So I ended up having to play the Steam version, which I bought back in 2014 when it came out. I played it for 5 minutes and never touched it again. But so the reason I steered you away from that one is, yeah, I felt like if you were going to evaluate the game, it would be best if you evaluated the original game because the Steam version has hugely increased field of view. You see a lot more of the map at one time. Some of the context, the context, like mouse instruction is missing from that version, where when you mouse over a flag in the original, the mouse pointer turns into a grasping hand to let you know that you can claim it. In the Steam version, that doesn't happen at all. It just stays a mouse. So you click on things, and then it'll change to whatever you're going to do, but like those sort of context clues are missing. And then the greatest sin, and the one that hurts my heart and made me clench my teeth playing this week, is they updated the music. I'm very much in Nolan's camp. I am a music junkie. I listen to video game music all the time. Nice. And this has been one of my jams forever. And they sort of updated the music to give it sort of a more modern, sort of synthesizer-y feel. It's not MIDI like in the original release. But the worst part is in the original game, the music is dynamic. So when you start a level, you've got just this bass, like a real low tone, kind of a bass line or a low rhythm line. And then as you engage in combat and the level picks up speed, the music will pick up speed, and you'll get this more intense music that plays. In the Steam version, it's just the music, and it doesn't match the action. It drove me nuts.
That's very impressive to have dynamic music like that. So I can totally see why that was like the biggest sin for you.
We've done another game recently with dynamic music, and I love it when it's done well. Here, I think it's done well, but they increase the volume too, and my ears are bleeding when I'm about to take the bass. Literally, it gets so loud.
It's like those memes that are loud to be funny.
Yeah, distorted.
Like that's the joke.
So what about the graphics? I know with RTS, graphics is not the most important thing. It's probably one of the. It's not, Kenny. What?
I'm not disagreeing with you.
There was a face.
He furrowed the brow.
I was thinking about the graphics of this game.
Okay.
Graphics are typically not the most important thing when it comes to RTS. And however, I think it's still something to talk about. Cutscene graphics, that's one thing. But when you're primarily in the game, I felt what we're looking at really good. I mean, I even thought there were some cool graphic effects, like when certain things explode, some of the pieces of the tank or whatever, the shrapnel not only shatters but like flies up towards the camera. And I thought that was cool to add some verticality to that. I thought it was really good with graphical effects and look and appeal.
I agree. I think I think they're very good. So there's this like recent game that came out called Factorio. I think that's what it's called. It's on Steam. It's like a builder. It's like a factory builder thing. I don't know. But it looks just like this game. I guarantee you this had to have been inspiration for their art style. I think it
You
ages
are
well.
totally right.
Oh, really? Like,
Yeah, no,
that's confirmed?
I hadn't. Oh, no. I mean,
Okay.
you're right that they look incredibly similar.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, like there's something about it that just ages really nicely. I think it's the details. I think they did a really good job on like the terrain, but also the UI I think is clean. It's like not too much, but on the right-hand side, it shows you like a close-up pixel art of what you're selecting. And also it shows like the robot talking in the top right, which is funny, but like the actual artwork is well done. I thought it was very good.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It's a clean looking game for sure. I do think, and you almost referenced this, but you didn't. I do think, Nolan, we should point out that not only was the music good, at least the original game's music, but they also were really good about putting like sound effects and vocal cues and really humorous ones that kind of fit the game. It's not
the same
uncommon for
voice.
real-time strategy. Yeah, but to like have your characters like talk to you and have some fun attitude is 100% like mid-90s, and it felt so good to me. This was the Bitmap Brothers equivalent of work, and it just felt really like a glove, and I loved all those sound effects they put in.
Yeah, I'll go with Dustin. They are all the same voice, but
They're robots. It works.
Yeah, I mean it's fine. What's really funny is when the sort of, I'm going to call her the adjutant because that's the StarCraft term, but the lady who talks, who notifies you when vehicles are built or robots are built, who when you're losing, not only are the robots like giving you all kinds of, they're giving you the business because you're losing the game, but she's like, you're crap. You're crap.
In the cutscenes, they actually reference her a few times because I think she's like the onboard navigation.
Right, yeah, in the cutscenes, yeah.
They call her something else, but
landing 100% successful.
That accent's so good.
It's really funny.
It's so funny.
Dave, have you played the sequel? 2001,
Space
the
Odyssey.
sequel Z or Z, Steel Soldiers came out. Have you played that one?
I have not, and I probably won't.
Is it bad?
It is wildly different. It's a 3D game, and the sort of basic structure of the game is still there, where you're capturing territories, and you're not in so much control of what you're building. But it's just, that was when Bitmap Brothers had basically already broken up, and they got about halfway through that, and then the rest of it got picked up by somebody else, and it's just oversimple. It's not. I wouldn't say it's worth looking into.
Well, for this game, there are a few different ways to play it today. You've already mentioned Steam and GOG. There is the Zod Engine remake, that's fans saying, hey, we want to keep this experience alive.
Zod Engine.
Which is just nuts. You can actually get a used physical copy of this game for $7 and $25 new and in the box. So
yeah, because you can't do anything with it.
It's not difficult to get your hands on today and play on GOG and Steam. It was $7, probably $2 now because someone's listening to us. But easy to play today if you would like to pick it up. Sorry, easy to play certain versions today. Very difficult, if not impossible, to play the original version today.
There you go.
You can figure it out.
Final thoughts.
At the end of each and every one of our episodes, we determine whether or not to give this game our vote for New Game Plus status. We typically don't when it comes to guest or director episodes. However, right before we got to this section, Dave unbelievably asked if we would give it our vote, whether or not we believe it's New Game Plus status. Let's do this. Let's do RTS Boy first with Kenny.
Okay.
And then we'll do Nolan, and then me, and then Dave, you can have the final word.
you realize you're taking a important part of your childhood and your video game nostalgia
Placing it.
and putting it into our hands, which is just not something I would ever recommend anyone do.
I mean, I've got to get the full experience, right? I've got to get the full experience.
All right,
This
Kenny,
is
what
coming
would you
from a
give?
guy who,
yeah,
who
okay.
didn't give Mega Man 3 New Game Plus. Continue. Kenny,
Reasonably
sorry.
so.
Okay. I wasn't expecting to have to come to a conclusion, so this makes things a little bit more difficult to me. This game for sure is a little bit of a mixed bag. Definitely dated. Definitely some of the like UI UX, how you get around, is going to feel a little bit older. But some of the gameplay makes up for those limitations in really smart ways. I think that if people are going to revisit this game, it shouldn't be because of the gameplay primarily. I think the selling point here is more the humor and fun and the tone and the story and kind of how and what this game was. Because they had a lot of fun with that, and I had a lot of fun with it. But while I was playing, even though it was a relatively simple game, I was enjoying myself, and that's ultimately a really big thing. So, yeah, I'm going to say a surprising New Game Plus from me. Overall, I had an enjoyable time. Certainly not one everybody's going to like, though.
Nolan?
You won't catch me giving New Game Plus to a real-time strategy game unless it's like really, really, really good. Maybe Age of Empires, because like it's like perfect, right? Even though I don't prefer those games. So that's kind of all I got to say.
Sure.
I can't, I'm not good at them. So I wasn't good at this one, even though it felt like, and I think maybe was designed to be an entry-level game to real-time strategy games where you have resource management and you have several types of units and buildings and like long games. Not for me. And even on this one where it's more of like a capture point, capture the flag kind of setup, no way. I can't. The humor's there, but it's dated enough in other ways that like I do not give it New Game Plus. So no.
The humor is there. It is fun and funny if you can see the cutscenes. I kind of played like Nolan this week, and on one monitor I had the game, and on the other I had a YouTube, long play that I would play after I'd finished stage. I'd click over and watch the cutscene, and then I'd go back to the game. I was kind of just going back and forth this week. I'm not good at RTS. I did beat a few stages and then watched many more. I get the appeal here, especially if you're an RTS fan. However, I do think the audience is going to be divided, because I think hardcore RTS fans are going to find it being too simplistic and not in line with some of the other RTS specific tropes that they know
That's
and
fair.
love. And then I think some will like it because it's got its own character charm, quirk, and that it can be an entry-level RTS for gamers. I think with my being bad at RTS, with the difficulty of playing the original version, and with it being maybe even just a little bit too simplistic in some of those ways, I would man, I don't know. I would not give it my vote for New Game Plus status. I think it's got to be a really good RTS for me to say that that people should spend time playing it.
You guys are crushers of dreams, ruiners of childhood.
Dave asked for this.
We've done it before. We've done it before, and we'll do it again. Dave, give us your final thoughts. But hey, we've had guests on here before that have brought a game and said, "Nah, it sucks." You know,
Our first guess was like, I would not play this game.
Go ahead, Dave.
Well, so first off, let me start off by shouting out my wife, who is sitting right here behind me, playing Terraria. She put in a ton of work this week trying to get it working through DOSBox, and we had it working, and then it just stopped. So I don't know. But so there is a lot about this game. Obviously, nostalgia is a huge factor for me. There's a lot about this game that just rings all those right bells. The music has been with me forever. I love the humor. I love all of the sort of Bill and Ted meets Wayne's World. Brad and Alan. I love that. I love Commander Zod. Shout out to the cutscene where he has the big machine gun and he's shooting in slow motion and blows up a whole building by himself.
Yeah.
So all of that stuff is great. And I do enjoy the gameplay. I actually enjoy the sort of element of randomness where you can sometimes take down a big vehicle with just some foot soldiers. And I do think one part of the appeal of the game is that it is a good entry point for RTSs for somebody who's never played them before, especially like mid-90s RTSs, which for the most part are wildly complicated. And just you got to read you got to read the big book to get into it. All of that being said, I would not give this New Game Plus if it came right down to it. I'm going to take a Kenny tactic here. Kenny has basically become famous for saying, "I give this a very, very mild New Game Plus." For me, this is a very, very mild not New Game Plus. I would recommend this game to anybody who appreciates that type of humor or doesn't have an especially big love for RTSs but wants to try them, because this is a game where you don't have like a 30-minute long level that you ultimately lose. Like you're in and out in
true.
5 or 6 minutes most of the time. But yeah, I probably wouldn't recommend this to your average person. StarCraft exists, okay? So,
yeah. Age of Empires 2 exists.
Yeah, you and I fall in a very similar camp there. So those are our thoughts. Thank you for sharing the game with us this week, Dave.
Yeah.
Seriously. And we know many people in our community played as well. I'll be able to read a few of those thoughts right now. Bethany Fox said, I did 2 things this week. I watched a long play of the OG version, and I played the Steam version. It's a fast-paced RTS that starts out fairly simple, but grows in complexity the longer you play. I like the simplicity of the game in a sense that you don't have to do any building, and you're just commanding troops and vehicles from one side of the map to the other. I like how the game introduces new units to use very gradually and gives you a brief description of the unit, what they're strong against and weak to before you start a new map. Is that just in the newer version, Dave? I don't think that was in the original, where it gives you like an overview of the units before you use them.
Yeah, that's the Steam version.
Okay.
Yeah,
gotcha.
The original doesn't do that.
It's kind of nice. The cutscenes are somewhat entertaining, but for me, I found this game to be boring to play and didn't really hold my attention for very long, and was more interested in watching than playing.
They're right. I was a little bored. I didn't say that earlier, but that's a good word for it. I was just not that entertained, so I agree.
Garlisle said, RTS is a genre I usually don't enjoy at all. That said, I actually like this one at least a bit. Automating most of the construction leaves players free to just focus on unit management, which reduces the entry barrier. The capture-focused strategy and rock, paper, scissors unit matchups remind me of one of my all-time favorite turn-based strategy series, Advance Wars.
Ooh.
So I feel like I picked this one up easily. Sadly, I found Z to be held back by repetitious stage design and small irritants like poor pathfinding. The visuals and music are functional, but not particularly engaging, and I kind of bounced off this game's choice of personality. I like what it's trying to be on the gameplay front, but it just wasn't enough to make me fall in love.
Love the Advanced Wars comparison. True, very true.
There's a lot of these old games that were like, oh man, it needs just a reskin, and we'd play it. This is one that I think needs to go one step further. I think a re-release, but with quality of life improvements, with better AI, with pathing improved, with all of those things that it's sort of lacking. This could be a really fun sort of middle ground RTS genre if somebody revisited it, but it needs all those things for sure.
Well, let's pray that the family gets back together so that they can make another one.
Reconciling.
Want to read one more commentary. This is from someone named Zcal.
Oh,
hey-o.
Shout out.
Hey,
Zcal said, I played
Preschool.
Zed on and off since its release in 96. One of my fondest childhood gaming memories is discovering this game with a good friend and laughing together at the rocket fuel binging and foul language. As a 20-something, I relished its challenge. Now in my mid-30s with a family, though, things have gotten weird. I realize that the soldiers in Z are like my kids. They talk back, they pester me when I'm trying to take a breather, they meander instead of going straight to where I told them. I constantly have to redirect them. They destroy the terrain they encounter instead of going around it. They ride around in little vehicles. Playing Z, like raising kids, is masochistic. But to tell you the truth, I wouldn't have it any other way. Sometimes warm fuzzies come in rough-edged packages. Oscar Wilde wrote that life imitates art. If that's the case, then I'm pretty sure I'm living Z's New Game Plus.
Oh, this is sweet. Dave, what do you have to say to Z-Cow?
Oh man, I'm not surprised by any of that. He's dead on, and I am right there with him. I have kids myself, and yeah, takes a little bit of time away from stuff like this.
So in summary,
they
don't
also
play
need to
Z, have kids.
Yeah, there you go.
They also need to work on their pathing.
Absolutely. Their pathing mostly involves going directly through whatever's in front of them.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for playing Z with us this week and sending in your thoughts. You can always do that. Send your thoughts on the Retro Game of the Week to ngppodcast@gmail.com or hop into our Discord channel. There is a section there called Commentary. You can submit your thoughts there. We'd love to include your thoughts as a part of our episode next week. But for now, we're putting aside Zed, and we are randomly selecting our next Retro Game of the Week, not from our Retro Master list that has 1,000 plus retro video games in there. We are selecting from a much smaller pool because it is time for the Patreon pool.
Pool.
It's a Patreon pool.
We have games like Shadow of the Colossus by Austin Carlson. We have games. Ben's been putting Faxinadu in there for a long time now. We've got Black and White and The Sims from Shauna. We've got Beautiful Joe from Cecil.
Oh.
We've got Dawn of War and Iggy's Wrecking Ball by Bethany Fox. Jet Set Radio is in here. We've got Dark Cloud and Mario Golf, and we've got multiple 50 Cent Bulletproof.
Really?
Which is a PlayStation 2 game
I've
that I
played
hope to
that
God we
game
don't
first
play.
of all. Second
You played
of all,
it?
Why multiple? Is this a joke? Are we getting
I
trolled?
don't know.
I
But
hope it's that.
we're randomizing now. We are going to be playing a Nintendo 64 game.
Yay!
So get out those wacky controllers. This game was released in 2000 as a platform
Oh.
video game developed by HAL Laboratory and published by Nintendo.
Oh,
It is the first of its kind to feature 3D computer graphics and follows the main character as he attempts to reassemble a sacred crystal shattered by dark matter. It is a
Wow.
game that was submitted by two patrons, both Starshine and Francesca. The game that we are playing is called Kirby 64: The Crystal Shards.
okay.
That's awesome.
Get
Oh man,
ready
that's awesome.
for an insane soundtrack. That's
Yes.
all I'm going to say.
But what if I said that Kirby's overrated?
Then you're an idiot.
Is Kirby even S tier
Look, he's so cute. Yes.
in
Okay.
Smash though?
The Kirby.
Oh, no.
All right,
That's
all right.
irrelevant.
Here's some. I'm about to get some shade thrown my way. Kirby is overrated, but his soundtrack is 100% not overrated.
That soundtrack's
Kirby
crazy.
music is awesome. Almost all the games have great music.
Here's what I'm going to say.
Gourmet Race?
Kirby doesn't suck.
He
Kenny.
blows.
No, he sucks.
Yeah, he does both. So find a copy of Kirby 64: The Crystal Shards and play it along with us this week.
And while you're at it, set aside some time to join us in Discord. It takes no time. You can go to ngppodcast.com, click join us in Discord, and you're there. We need, and I can't stress this enough, we need 1 million members by February 25th.
We do.
So please do this.
Very
Yeah.
doable.
Also want to say a big Thank you to those of you who support us on patreon.com, especially those like Dave who go above and beyond and support us at the director level. Dave, thanks so much, and thanks for this wonderful episode. Also, Antonin and Garlisle, you guys are great. We have a huge cast of producers who, including some new producers this week. Dan the Man joined us as a new producer level supporter, as well as a number of other patrons who jumped on board as well. Charlie, Astral Soul, Kipo, and Joe. Maybe Kippo, were you?
I would think Kippo. That's kind of like, I think Final Fantasy, you've got the little anyways.
Like Kungry Kippo? As well as our long list of longer-term producers: Amarley and Austin, Ben, Bethany Fox, Bro Jim, Carrie, David, Francesca, Corey, Maxima, Mr. Latte, Shauna, William, and Zion. You guys are absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for your support.
Thank you.
You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. All of our links are in the show notes. Listen directly on any podcast provider of your choice. Make sure you subscribe so that you are the first to get new NGP episodes. And while you're at it, leave a kind rating and review. This episode was edited and produced by our good friend Tom Tate. Dave, unbelievable. Thank you for joining us. Is there anything you want to plug? Tell them to find you on the webs.
No.
No.
Don't find
Love
Dave,
that.
but if you would like to talk to him, hop in our Discord.
Hop in
because that's where
Discord.
Dave spends some of his time.
Yeah, give him a shout out.
Join us next week as we play Kirby 60. I said, is there anywhere you'd like them to find you? No.
It was like a resounding no. So
His address we'll have in the show notes as well.
yeah.
Join us next
P.O.
week
box.
as we play Kirby 64, The Crystal Shards. I'm still Dustin.
I'm Kenny.
That's unbelievable. And this has been New Game Plus.